Welcome back, you guys. Pretty interesting build here today. We have a SAR 9. Had a lot of customers reach out to us and just kind of wanted to get the rundown of, do we offer services on this particular model pistol or not? For the longest time, the answer to that was no. So we had decided, why don't we pick one up? Why don't we actually own one? Go through the process of figuring out what can be done, what maybe shouldn't be done, and just kind of walk you guys through that. So we want to kind of do that through a video. We wanted to kind of just show you, give you some recommendations, ultimately educate you on services that can be performed on the SAR 9 model pistol. Now, first and foremost, there's a lot of different videos out online about different rear sights, different front sights. Will it take Glock parts? It's very similar to a Glock. I want to give you the 30-second overview of my opinion, and then we're going to get into the work, just because we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. There are a lot of different build videos or those videos out there that do that demonstration work, so we're not going to go into that. First and foremost, the sights are totally different. The rear sight is nothing like a Glock rear sight. Obviously, I went ahead and pulled it off since we're going to be doing work on it. I wanted to show you what it looked like. The front hole actually will take a Glock sight. It's a little loose. Obviously, if it was tightened up correctly, you're not going to have that issue with using a Glock sight in the front hole with no modifications. The only issue you run into is by pulling off the factory sight. There's this big silver area, and more than likely, your sight's probably not going to cover that. So you want to take into consideration, if you are going to upgrade some kind of upgrade to some kind of a newer sight or an upgraded sight, that may run into an issue with just the exposure over the coating, which kind of leads me to my next point, and that is, what's it coated with, and why exactly was it not coated under the sights like we see with pretty much every other model pistol out there on the market? So it's almost like they put the sights in and then they just coated the whole slide and then they put the guts in. Doesn't really make any sense to me as far as exposure goes and things like that. I mean, obviously this is raw metal here. We're seeing some places online that are saying it's stainless. We're seeing some other places online saying it's not stainless, or it's not a stainless slide and it's not a stainless barrel. I do not know that 100%. Either way, I would probably want the coating to be completely sealed, where it can't peel or chip or flake or crack or something over time because there's a break in the coating. Adhesion to itself obviously is always strong, and then when we have a gap like this, there's always taking a chance of it breaking at that fail point because it's not connected to itself there. So with that being said, guys, a couple of the other things as far as the barrel goes, I know there's a lot of companies out there that are like, hey, the barrel fits. The barrels might look like they fit out of a Glock, but they will not go in, period. There's actually a little bit of a gap right here. So if you were to put a 17 barrel in this gun, you'd find out that you'd never want to shoot it because it's not locked up in the lockup area when it would be in the closed position and ready to fire. So definitely not safe. Once again, you probably could get one of the barrels to work, but I would not recommend doing that. Let's talk about a couple of the other weird issues with this. So extractor has a spring, much like what you'd see like with the M&P. It's a spring, it's an extractor bar, it's a roll pin that holds it in. It has a plunger on the bottom side, which we don't really see with M&P. That's more of like a SD9VE kind of thing. So pretty interesting there. One of the biggest issues you're going to run into, which we also see on the Glocks, is obviously we have the channel for the striker, but on the right hand side on a Glock we have a rod, an extraction plunger based rod that basically goes all the way through and pushes on the extractor, so that way the extractor has tension forward and the rear cap has tension to the rear. Since the extractor is its own kind of entity here, what ends up happening is this plunger in the back literally just puts pressure on the rear cap, and we're going to have to go through that a little bit more as we get to the end of the video and discuss that once I know more information. But basically that hole on the top right hand corner right there goes all the way to about that serration. So it's the serration right before where the extractor is. It would end somewhere right in here. That's an interesting issue, because when adding an optic cut to a pistol like this, you got to take a look at how low do we have to go to get rid of the dovetail, right? Unless we're cutting in front of it. And since this sets higher than our firing pin channel, that's pretty much right where the screw would go for an optic. So if we're going to put an optic on there, the screw's going to be right through that plunger hole, and then of course the spring would have to be shortened up because it's not going to go through there. So it causes a lot of different issues when adding an optic to the pistol, but nonetheless we're going to be doing that. So let's jump into the work. Aside from that, pretty close to a Glock. The depth of the rear serrations is about the same. The channel on the inside where your frame mates up to the slide is about the same. So It's not a whole lot of difference there. The only thing I can tell you is a real thin top plate. It seems like the top's really thin. The walls on a Glock are a little thicker here, and on a Glock they're about the same here, pretty close. So we are seeing some thicknesses differences where the barrel would lock up in this zone here. So those are about the only other changes that I can kind of give you guys for advice on when you're thinking about buying the pistol or modifying the pistol or services that can be done on the pistol. Those would be things to take into consideration. All right, let's talk about the work that we're going to be performing. And of course, since this is a new build, we're going to end up finding ourselves probably getting off path. Somewhere along the way, as we do a service, we're going to come back and say, let's adjust that service just because we don't have any experience with it. First and foremost, we're going to be cutting this for an optic to the rear. We're going to be removing the dovetail. We're going to be cutting a new front of optic Glock style dovetail. And then, of course, we're going to be using a Glock front factory style sight. So it'll end up being a suppressor sight. It won't be anything odd, but it'll end up being just a standard set of sights that you can get. So, questions that you guys are going to have is, will an optic fit between here and here? The answer to that is yes. A micro dot, the 507, 407, KX2, the Romeo 0, the Sentinel, probably the J Point, RMS CW. These are all going to fit in here. I don't make that recommendation for what would be like the, you know, a Vortex Venom, a Viper, a Burris, Hollow Sun, RMR, because it's going to be so tight through here. Mainly the biggest issue is that it would come really close to where the barrel locks up. You'd be way up in here, and that's where your plunger is, and that plunger is way up towards the top. I'm talking like you pretty much skim the surface and you're going to hit that plunger hole, which means it's going to be pressing on the bottom of the optic, which comes into, what if I don't want to run an optic? How do you keep the plunger in? So there's that's just the no-go. I wouldn't recommend that. If you're going to do some sort of a larger optic, I would go to the rear front of optic dovetail or a micro optic here. Micro optics are mostly sealed on the bottom, for the big named ones are. So that's not that big of an issue with that plunger once it's sealed on the bottom. And quite honestly, I'm not even sure it goes up quite that far with a micro dot optic. I haven't mic'd it and measured it out for you guys. As far as the side work goes, we're going to be shaving the sides, which is going to be coming from the rear, going the rear serrations going forward. We're not going to do a traditional shave like we would see on the Glocks, where we go down and over off the end. We're going to be doing more of the side window pocket, which has been adjusted to fit this particular model slide, and it should match up pretty well with the angle of the rear and front serration. So you guys see that a lot on our Glocks. We do side windows. It's a series of simulated windows. Then there's some side windows. We're going to be performing it also on here. It's a big requested service on the Glocks, and I think it'll just be as popular here. It gives you guys a lot of options as we get a little bit further into a full build. It gives you options of what you can have done and what you can't have done. Cobra nose, we're going to run that. As far as the top front goes, I don't know what we're doing yet. I'm going to get those sideways on there. I want to get the Cobra nose on there. I want to get the optic. I want to get the dovetail. I want to figure out what's it going to play out with on the sides. Really want to see those side windows. Can we do Raptor cuts? How much material do we have from the top to the side? Keep in mind the top is a thinner top than a Glock top. Are we going to go with a window, a triple window? Are we going to go with some kind of a new pattern? I don't know 100% what we're going to be doing on the top just yet. I do want to see the sides. I do want to see the Cobra nose. I want to see how the optic looks. I want to make some final decisions, and then of course I'll bring it back and we'll discuss that. Guys, expect to see some changes from the discussion work to the end. Once again, new to us, we may get halfway through this and say, no, don't do that, don't do that. Or we may get, you know, crazy wild with it and go, let's add this, you know, let's add top knurling because we're not going to do anything, or let's add side knurling because we think there can be a change. One of the things I do want to point out here is the writing on the slide. I cannot stand writing on slides, period. Okay, I don't know, it's something wrong with me or whatever, but factory markings, I really do not like them. The only thing I don't like more than factory writings is business logos on slides. I cannot stand that. I would never, me personally, I would never be able to support a company that runs their name on my slide. I'm not going to go buy a car from a dealership that's going to permanently put their name on my car, okay? It's one thing if that's the brand, which we are talking about removing a brand name, and it's another thing from buying it from a dealer and them just permanently branding my car. Not going to happen. I could never support that business. Maybe it's cool with you guys. Every time I see a logo on the side of a slide over here, I know this is a little bit of a rant, sorry. See this logos on the sides of the slides over here? I'm just like, yeah, no, never gonna see me support that company, ever. I cannot stand that. If you do good work, I came to you for the work to be done, not for you to put your name on my slide, period. There's no other way to say it. So, guys, sorry about that. It just, it gets under my skin. It definitely makes my blood boil when even thinking about it. let's get this work turned out. Let's bring it back. I'm going to have a whole new opinion at the end about what I like, what I don't like, what we should have done, maybe changes we could have done. So we're going to have a lot of stuff going on at the end just because it's so new to me, and I'm going to talk to you guys mostly about the hurdles of what's going to happen with this optic cut because of that rear plunger, and how did we get past it. So let's see what we come up with. Alright guys, now that everything's been put back together and colored, let's kind of just discuss everything as a whole. There's a couple things I want to go over with you guys. I want to kind of just give you my mindset of where I was at when I was doing the work. We ended up coloring this in the Federal Standard, what they call as an E190-20150. Not 100% sure I like this color. It happens to be one that we had here. We don't stock this color, so it's one of those deals where it's typically not one that you would see us post, but I wanted to show it to you anyhow. With it being one of the Elite series, it's a little bit shinier than what we would typically get with the H series or with what would be the C series, which is Air Cure. It's okay, but I kind of wanted to show you a couple things, and that was one of the main reasons that I chose this color, because I wanted to demonstrate a little bit of the issues that we had with the slide. So we're going to get to that here in a moment. First and foremost, optic cut. Front of optic dovetail, pretty seamless and nice looking design. Obviously, as you guys know, there's a roll pin that's up here for the extractor that's pretty well hidden now that we've added the dovetail over top of that. This just happened to be a set of iron sights and optic that I had here for demonstration purposes, kind of just show you guys what it would look like more so as a complete build. Let's talk about the side windows. So we ended up doing the side windows. On this side, there was a little bit of text left over. We ended up doing a cleanup on that. On this side, they actually have somewhat of a logo right here. It's a little bit of a white logo. Half of that was remaining. Half of that was removed when we did this step down in the windows. So I went ahead and cleaned that up as well. It's a real nice appearance. Ultimately, I think going forward, I would probably move these windows down a little bit, allowing for other features to be done on the top, something like a top wave or raptor cuts, maybe even some sort of a top serration or edge serration. I'm not really against how it looks now. I just had the intent of keeping this text here and not removing it. But then once we got to this side, I realized we've got half text. We thought, we should probably just go ahead and remove all of it for the cleanest look. So these will probably come down a little bit. The Cobra nose is appropriate in its location. I like that. I wouldn't move that at all. Real pleased with the way that looks. We will add the barrel to it here in a moment so you can see that a little bit better. Single top window, easy. So that's just something that could be added if you wanted to do an optic cut and you didn't want the side windows, you didn't want the Cobra nose. Really pleased with the way that looks. One of the things I want to talk about on this particular model, and this is the first one of these I've had in hand, is first and foremost I guess I'm going to say this the politest way I can say it, the lack of quality in the steel used for the pistol itself. So one of the reasons I ended up choosing the Elite Series coloring was because it is a little bit more flashy than what you would get with, say, the other series, the H series and the C series. I wanted to show you guys, it's going to be hard to see, but it kind of looks like there's almost like tool marks or like a grain down through here like you'd see with wood. And what this basically is, and you guys can even see it up in here, these are areas that we didn't really touch. Let's see, you guys can see a bunch of tool marks on the bottom here where it was kind of put together. The idea here is that whenever they did it prior to coating, they pretty much did some sort of a rough grind across here, and the material itself really just wasn't very acceptive of that process. And I don't really think it's the process that they used in order to achieve the end result. I think it's just the material they used. I ran into a lot of the same. When I ended up doing the cut work, it really just was the cutter looked like it was broken. Sometimes when you get a broken cutter, you'll start to get like cut marks and swirls and things like that. And then really that's just not the case. It's just the metal itself. Hard to see. You might be able to see a little bit of it up and through here as well. So that was one of my biggest gripes about this pistol, is that like you can really see that it has like this grainy feeling to it under their coating. You can't see that whenever you buy it because it's black and the coating's fairly thick. So you really only get that whenever it's, you know, stripped. My recommendation would be to go with a different coating that hides that a little bit better. Don't go with an Elite Series based coating or anything that's even remotely shiny, because it's really going to stand out. It's going to look pretty poor. So go with something like a stainless or a tungsten or a black or a green, any of the grays, anything that's a darker color that would kind of fill that a little bit better. It will just ultimately come out looking a little bit better. That's just my opinion to you guys, just giving you a heads up whenever you decide to go with something. That's what I would do. One of the other things that I thought was kind of odd, and you might be able to see it here, I'll try to add a picture. Of course, we stripped this entirely down. We showed at the beginning that there was like, kind of like a bald spot here and then a bald spot in the back where the iron sights were, almost like they put the iron sights in and then they coated the slide. The coating itself, and I've never quite seen this before, the coating itself has somehow altered or changed the slide metal where it's actually a difference in thickness. So even when you take the slide and you strip it all the way down to the raw, you aluminum oxide, I mean, it's down to the raw. You can't even see where that little patch was. It still is raised in a little bit of the area. You might be able to see it in front of this sight a little bit here. There's a little bit of a raised area, and really what that is that's wherever there was something on top of the slide before it was black coated. So it's almost like either it was stripped down further and then it was sandblasted and then it was coated and then it left some sort of a height difference, or the coating itself somehow changed it with a height difference. Not 100% sure how that came about, because you can't physically see that. Whenever this is sandblasted down to the raw, you cannot physically see that there's a change there. I probably would have scraped that with something or did like a hand lap or a sand on it just to make sure it was the same, but I couldn't see it. So at some point in time, whenever this gets taken back down, and more than likely it'll go back through black nitride, I'll probably do a scrape on that to make sure it looks good. But I wanted to just show you guys what hurdles are here with this particular model weapon, because these are things that we got to go through. These are things that you're going to have to go through and think about and work through if you want to have something done. So those are kind of a couple things. Ultimately, I really like the optic cut for this particular model, because it wasn't optic ready. I would probably choose that service over any of the other services. It's a really clean look. Really just like the way that came out. I do want to say that I haven't done full testing on this because we didn't cut it for that optic. This is an RMR, obviously it's the same as the Holosun. The main idea here is that if you were to cut this with screws that are a little bit closer to the center, there is a chance that this screw on this side would punch a hole where that pressure spring is. And once again, we talked about that a little bit at the beginning. There's a spring in the back that pushes onto the rear cap. It basically just holds tension onto the rear cap. We just barely went into that hole. I'm talking like just broke it where there was enough liquid to come through it whenever we were cutting. Went ahead and threaded this hole for the screw. This spring still goes in and out with the screw. The screw still goes in and out even if the spring's already in there. With the screws being a little bit closer for more of a micro optic, I could definitely tell you that it's probably going to really hit that. Really not that big of a deal. You could probably always mount your optic, and then the spring could be shortened up. The spring could then go in last, and then the rear cap could go on. So it's not like it's that big of a deal. I would just have to do some more measurements on it. It's definitely not a service that's offered right now, not until I went through it and figured out what's going to happen and how's it going to happen. So right now, basically, it is the Holosun RMR, 507, 407C, 508T kind of footprint cut. So that's kind of where we are with that. Ultimately, I really do like it. Let's put the barrel in. Let's put the spring in, guys. If you haven't been following us, on Instagram or Facebook, that's really the place to be. Everything gets posted over there quicker than on YouTube, just mainly because we just really haven't had time to quite do the builds like we used to do. We do have a couple other model pistols that are already here that we're working on, so this happens to be one of them that was kind of a new one for you guys and a new one for myself, and I'm just kind of reaching back out a little bit more so into the oddball market that we used to do quite a while back, and see kind of see where we at. I know we had a lot of requests for these, mostly just optic cuts. Obviously, if we're going to do optic cuts, we might as well throw something else in there at the same time. But mostly, I just wanted to kind of get a feel for the make and model, the disassembly, the materials itself. I think it's a really nice weapon. There's no doubt about that. I mean, it's pretty slick. Obviously, it's very similar to a Glock. It's got that H&K style grip on it. I think those two had a baby, and here's where we are. But the idea behind it is that I do think services are offered. There's definitely some stuff that can be performed for you guys. Instagram is where you're going to start to see that stuff evolved. You can always go to, you know, our webpage. You can always go all the way down to the bottom. There is a link for this service here. You can select it a la carte, optic dovetail, window, side nose, cobra nose, however, whatever configuration you want. You can build it that way. We do have the option of adding colors to the checkout system. So if you end up going to our, go back to service, go all the way down to the bottom, there's some additional services in there. You can see just a coding service, and that's where you can actually add colors to your order if it's something that we don't stock. So we can get that order, we can go ahead and get that applied. Not a real big deal. We just happen to stock the main colors and kind of skip the oddball colors. But once again, guys, thanks for watching. We are still a growing channel. We're still a growing business. We're still trying to iron out all those details of exactly what it is that we do offer and how we're going to be offering certain services. I know there's been a lot of people that have requested a lot of different services, and they're like, man, these pistols are so big, I don't know why you're not offering any service on them. And sometimes it's just because we haven't had time, or because there are some challenges with the weapons themselves, and we've kind of demonstrated that a little bit here today. Guys, if you happen to have any questions, feel free to use that contacts tab on the webpage. We do have our webpage information and other source information, our media information on the details of the video, so you can see those links right from there. Instagram, Facebook, Google reviews, reviews on Facebook. So there's a lot of information about us. Hopefully we'll have some more SAR 9 stuff out for you guys, kind of give you guys a couple different patterns, and just kind of, I don't know, maybe just see what else is available for these guys. If you need anything, just let us know.